Welcome back. As you may notice, the bug is up on the lift today. We are going to install a set of Caster Shims today. These go underneath your front beam to improve handling. If you don't have a lift, it's not a big deal. You can do this on the ground. It's not that tough. So let me get you underneath the car and I'll show you what I got going on. All right, so we're underneath the car, underneath the front of my 73 Baja Bug. And if you look, I have a light shined onto the front beam here. Now I need to mention before I even start, you will not have this silver bracket here. I made this to get around my sway bar. So this is pretty simple. These Caster Shims go behind the beam here. So what you need to do to install them is loosen these bolts. Well, you got to take the bottom ones out, loosen the top, and kind of pull your beam forward a little bit. Now, just for safety's sake, I put this jack stand in here just to hold, just in case. And I've already loosened a few things because on my setup here, this bracket and my bumper and everything kind of gets in the way. So here's what you got to do first. If you're on the ground, make sure you have your car jacked up with jack stands, safety first. Get the car up in the air a little bit so the wheels are off the ground. And then you can loosen these two 19 mils. Like I said, I've already got these loose. So for my situation here, I kind of have to wiggle this out at an angle to get the bottom out, and I've already figured that out. So not the easiest thing to do, but we'll get it. I should have watered these holes out a little bit wider. So this is the beginning of my journey here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get these longer bolts in this hole because of my bracket that's in the way. As you can see, they're different sizes. The new bolts are a little bit longer than the stock ones. Once you put your shim in here, you're going to need some extra threads to make up that space. First, let's get our shim on the driver's side here. I'm going to take a rag and wrap it around my screwdriver so I don't mess up my fancy paint here. And pull this beam up forward toward me a little bit. All right, she moved a little. Let's see if our shim will fit in here. Ooh, stuff's moving. Oh yeah. Get this move forward. And the shim slides right in. I'll show you. See the shim in here? So that kind of kicks the front of your beam out a little bit. And it's supposed to help from, things like the death wobble, high speed shaking on the steering wheel, things like that. Now on my Bug, I have an adjustable beam. And I've heard other people say if you have a Baja and you have your front end raised, that you may need to put the shims on the top. Well, I've heard from other people that have done that it does not work. And even though they have their front end jacked up a little bit with the adjustable beam, that it still doesn't work. And they always put them on the bottom. So I'm going to try them on the bottom. And of course, it's Western New York and it's raining and sleeting and everything out today. So we're not going to be able to test this tonight, but moving on. Let's see if we can get this longer bolt in this hole. It is not gonna work. So I thought this was gonna be a big deal to get these bolts in, but apparently it's not that much of a job. I have to just waller out the side of this hole just a touch. You can do it. There we go. I don't know if you can see that little shiny spot right there on the left side of that hole. But if I put this bolt in through here, it clears, no problem. Took me like 2 seconds to make that hole a little wider so I can angle this bolt in here. But that's that. We already got our shim in on this side, and I'll show you the other side real quick. Let's give you a different angle this time, up from underneath. So once again, I'm going to put a rag on my screwdriver here so I can pry this beam forward a little bit. Hopefully that's enough. Let's see. Not yet. Oh, no, we're in. All right. That is a pretty simple job. As you can see right here, our shim is in. And now all we got to do is tighten these back down. These 4 bolts, 2 on this side and 2 on the other side. And for me, I have to tighten all these back down. I had to loosen my front bumper so I could pry up on this because of this whole bracket thing that I made. The fact that I have these brackets on here, I can't just use a 19 socket. I have to use an open end wrench. So it is what it is. Takes a little longer. These top ones are still in probably 2 or 3 turns, just so the beam doesn't drop on you while you're working on it. So this shouldn't take long to tighten back down on the top. The other issue is I can't get a torque wrench on here. I think it's something like 35 to 38 foot-pounds. I gotta check. But we're gonna use the old wrist and forearm for the torque on this. You know the deal. Tighten it down, make sure it's tight. Give it a quarter turn bump and you should be good to go. Alright, that one's snug, not torqued down yet. Now for the other side. I have ratchetable wrenches, but apparently I don't have a 19, or it's probably somewhere over by the engine build, wrapped in towels. But if you're underneath your car, a ratchetable 19, or like I said, a socket would probably be a lot faster. This is just my situation with this silver bracket on here. Homemade. All right, I am going to do a check before I tighten this down to make sure that both of those shims are in the same position. I'm good. I'm doing the best I can not to get in your guys' way so you can see, but you get the point. You're tightening a bolt. It's a 19 mil. Yeah, that one's good. That one's good. That one's good. That one's good. We are all set. And that's all you need to do to put in a set of Caster Shims. And if I could just get my flashlight out of here, the job would be almost done. There we go. I need to tighten this back up. And the same thing on the other side. And then I'm done. Not tough at all. Pretty easy to do. One thing I forgot to mention is this car is a fairly new build. And when I took those old bolts out, they were a little bit rusty, which is surprising because this thing's never even been in the rain. So I did put a little bit of anti-seize on the threads. Just a little, just to keep them from corroding. And I put it on the shank of the bolt too, just to stop it from rusting. There you can see there's rust on there already. And it's never even, like I said, never been in the rain. So I put that, you can see there's anti-seize on this one already. I put a little on the shank of the bolt here too when I put the new ones in. Don't forget, if you get these and they don't have the longer bolts, you need to purchase the longer bolts. So real quick, I wanted to explain why I'm putting my Caster Shims in the way I'm putting them in. From what I understand, the rake that you have on your vehicle, the rake of the floor pan, top to bottom, also affects the degrees of your positive caster. So on this vehicle, I have about an inch of rake. That's 13. And that's 14. So those shims are about a 1/4 inch. That should definitely help. Right now, this is pretty much a new build. Everything in the suspension is stiff and new. I put the car down on the ground and I let it settle for about a half hour and I bounced the suspension just to make sure everything was kind of back where it's supposed to be. But the reason I put these in the bottom is so I can retain some positive caster. When I drive this down the road, it was tracking fine. I've only had this car driving since, I don't know, about 6 months. And I only drove it about a dozen times. I never had a problem with it pulling left or right, but I did notice a little bit of shake when I was going over 55. I haven't really had this thing up to high speeds. I have the vehicle lifted 2 inches in the front, 2 inches in the back. Now, that was when I first did it. Like I said, it's all brand new suspension. But when I first did this car, I tried to do 2 inches in the front, 2 inches in the back. So I have the adjustable front beam. And I have it jacked up. And I had it too high when I first started, so I lowered it down. The front is very stiff on this car. Very light car. It doesn't take much for them leaves in the front beam to be tightened up. Once you pull that suspension and you pull your trailing arms down like this, it gets real stiff. Here, I'll show you. It rides like a truck. It's stiff. But in the back, I put these in. I don't know if anybody knows this company. I'm not going to mention it. I don't think he makes them anymore. But those spring plates are bent, so they're down like this. The spring plates come out like this, and then they go down, and it has a 2-inch lift. I don't know if you can really see it from here. Probably not. But the car has a 1-inch rake from front to back. There's a lot of arguments about putting the Caster Shims on the top. From what I have seen and the explanations that I've seen online, putting them on the top does not work. It just makes it worse. So I'm going to try them on the bottom first. We'll see how it goes. If I don't like how the car rides, I'll take them out because it ran good before. But I'm just trying to make things a little bit better by putting those in. There's a guy in Africa that does a real good explanation about why you don't put the Caster Shims on the top of the beam and mount it to the frame head. It just doesn't, he says it just doesn't work. And he shows exactly why, and he does a whole geometry and how the whole front suspension works. And I think that's on a kingpin suspension. I don't know if there's a difference between ball joint or the kingpin or how the spindle works. I'm not sure. So use your own discretion, make your own decisions. If you have anything you want to throw in the comments, go ahead and throw them in. I'm willing to learn. I always want to learn more, make this thing as safe as I possibly can. But like I said, because of the rake on this and the lift, and from what I've heard online, and I'm going with the bottom. I'm going to try the bottom first and then test it. And in the spring, we will test exactly how this thing rides. I will see if my suspension alignment has gone off a little bit before I take it out and make sure that my front tires are tracking and towed correctly and all that. I'm pretty sure it's going to be all right. Like I said, make your own decisions. Let me know what you think. And hopefully this thing rides better so when we come around to probably March and get this thing back on the road. Pretty easy job to do. So get out in the garage and get something done. Have a great day. What are you standing there for? Get out in the garage. Get something done.